Thank you everybody for joining us for this morning's CPD Live. We're joined by Deborah Salsbury, who brings extensive experience working with pupils in alternative provision and supporting neurodivergent learners. For everybody that is joining us live this morning, you will, as long as you stay for the full session, you will receive the link to get your certificate at the very end, and I will then process the recording and send it out. It's half term, so if I'm being really super realistic, probably latest by next Monday, but I will try my very hardest to get it done as soon as possible. So today, Deborah will be sharing practical trauma-informed strategies for delivering personalised one-to-one tuition in complex settings. Thank you, Deborah, for leading the session. Over to you.
Okay, welcome everybody. Yes, I've entitled this presentation, Re-engage, Reconnect and Relearn. And it is going to be trauma-informed, so we will be talking about how our learners present when we first start working with them, and how we can unlock their potential in the alternative provision setting. So just a very quick background of why I'm here today and why I'm talking about alternative provision. I started off in 1993, that's me with my first class in 1993. As a primary school teacher. I'm not sure how I managed to stay in the mainstream system for 19 years, but I did, because my role was really varied. And the head teacher, who was there for a long time, spotted my interest in SEN. So when back in the day, SEN children in a mainstream school were given School Action Plus money, a budget, an extra budget, and that became my role. I had my own room with 8 pupils, and the head teacher at the time gave me the best piece of advice I've ever had, and she said, don't give them more of what they're getting in the classroom that hasn't worked, give them something alternative, give them something different. And that gave me free rein, but it also showed that she trusted me to give those children what they needed. So that was an absolute privilege, and something that I really enjoyed, and taught me more about how children learn than I ever did at university or being a class teacher. So then I became the intervention lead, and I looked at the needs of all the children in the school and allocated intervention. So not all of that was through me. I organised all the TAs and everything as well. So still in the same school, because if something's going well and you're enjoying it, why change anything? So at the same school, the same head teacher, who'd also been there for a very long time, said we've got an opportunity for reading recovery training, which is really expensive training, but it was fully funded by the government at the time, which meant I went to Lewisham Council, a school there, to be trained in reading recovery. And every couple of weeks, I think it was, I met up with other reading recovery teacher, going to be teachers, reading recovery teachers, and we trained together. And the most amazing thing about that training was that it was so practical. It was all about us observing each other teach. So we had to take it in turns in bringing a pupil in, and we taught in a classroom, and we watched each other, and we gave feedback, positive feedback, and then things that we noticed that they might want to tweak next time. So really reflective practice, which again, just taught me so much. But more than anything, the reading recovery training, I think, is what has led me to alternative provision, because the way that we were taught to teach just was how I'd always wanted to teach, but wasn't really able to in the classroom. And that's, really tuning into each individual and looking at what makes them tick, what their strengths are, what motivates them, what things also maybe they resist, and looking at their behaviours, not behaviour, but their behaviours at every second that you're teaching them, every minute, just observing, noticing, wondering being curious about what you can do at that moment in time. And that was, you know, I suppose you'd call it intuitive teaching. And that's how I always felt I was. And that's why I probably wasn't destined to be a mainstream teacher forever, because I could see more and more that the curriculum was becoming restrictive. I couldn't deliver the curriculum with authenticity and integrity. And so I knew it was my time to move on. And I knew it was my time to move on when the new head teacher came in and said, we're stripping all early intervention. You need to go back to being a class teacher, at which point I said, no way, I'm out here and I'm using what I've got. So some of you, or what I've learned so far and where I am in my journey. So some of you might be at that point now. You might be just at the point of leaving mainstream education and maybe starting to think about starting up your own alternative provision or applying to local authorities. So, you know, use this time, if that's you, to reflect on your career so far and the bits that you can take with you into your teaching of children in alternative provision. So once I got out of teaching, and if any of you here, you know, are going through that now, I really feel for you, because although I knew it was the right thing to do, I did see it as a kind of grieving process for the profession that I loved, and I thought I would stay in till I was 67 or whatever the age is. So yeah, so there is, you know, hope. And congratulations if you are looking at alternative provision, because I'm biased, but I think it's the most amazing and privileged thing to do, is to work with those for whom the system hasn't worked. And that's really going to be the emphasis today. It's not the onus on the child doing something wrong. It's a system that's not actually fit for purpose for many young people. So with any sort of career and business journey, sometimes, oh, and I've just noticed a spelling mistake, I'll get onto that in a minute. Sometimes with business, there is a little bit of luck, and I suppose there was a bit of luck because I knew the lead of the behaviour service in Bromley at the time, and she said to me, right, okay, the reading doctor which you've created, it would be really good if you could come into a pupil referral unit, one of the biggest ones in Bromley. And I said, oh gosh, I haven't done that before. Had this vision of what a pupil referral unit looked like, you know, like a horrible building at the end of a school field or something. And she said it's with older children. I said, I haven't worked with teenagers before. And normally I'm really positive, but I did put up a few of those barriers. She persuaded me. She said, oh, come in, just come and see what it's like. Well, that was really where I started to grow, you know, an intervention and a service for children who had been excluded from mainstream schools. And that really ignited my passion even more. So then I'm a tuition business owner. Many of you know that I own the Reading Doctor, which is a tuition franchise, and I've done that for 13 years, 7 years on my own, 6 years franchising. I'm also the parent of a neurodivergent daughter, and I should have added there, I'm also the parent of a neurotypical daughter. And that was really interesting because my youngest, who is ADHD and has dyslexia, she just needed to learn in a different way. And it was around the time I was starting to feel unhappy in the school. It was around the time I did my reading recovery training. And, you know, I've had to really push back against the school and say, we're going to do things differently for her. She doesn't learn, you know, she doesn't learn if she thinks that it's explicit learning. She learns if she's doing something she enjoys, that's on her topics, appeals to her interests. So that also was part of me noticing that she needed to be taught differently. Also my lived experience, going back to the spelling mistake, even though I've looked at this like 5 times, I can see a spelling experience wrong. I always like to say we celebrate mistakes and never worry about them too much, especially with the young people that we teach. I think it's really good to show that it's okay to make mistakes and you can learn from those mistakes as well. So that's just kind of not validating, but, you know, putting context around how I've arrived to this today. And actually, if Sam had asked me to do this even a few years ago, I would have said an outright no, because due to my experience of being dyslexic, undiagnosed in school, I have always been absolutely petrified of any public speaking. I have got every strategy to avoid speaking in public that you can ever imagine. So I'm really good at spotting that in children as well. So I think it's really good when you first meet a young person that you really allow them to tell you about all those avoidance strategies that they've had and why they've avoided them, and kind of normalize it for them. You know, oh, I can see why you ran out of the classroom when you were asked to read out loud. You know, that must have felt really quite scary for you. You know, if you felt like you couldn't make mistakes, you didn't feel safe to make mistakes. So I think just being really giving a little bit of yourself is a really good thing to do. So before we begin, let's just get it out there. I've already done it already. This is not a promotion of my business at all, but I won't be able to help use experience of teaching children to read because it is my background, it's my passion. I can't help myself because I'm biased in that respect, because I really believe literacy is the key to opening up a whole new world for young people. And, you know, I think it should be an absolute minimum requirement that all children leave primary school at least being able to read. And at the moment, that is not the case. And if you haven't, if you're just dipping your toe in the water of alternative provision, you might be in for a bit of a shock when you, for example, meet a 14-year-old who, like I did a few weeks ago, who can only read 3 words. And this child has been in our education system for however many years that is. But everything I'm going to talk about does relate to all subjects and settings. So I think it's really good to define our terms when we're talking about alternative provision, especially if a lot of you are new to it. So it's for children who are unable to access full-time mainstream school. So you can see there, they're all the kind of where alternative provision sits. And it's not meant to be a replacement. It's meant to be temporary, specialised, bespoke, and it's designed to address barriers to learning and support re-engagement with education. Now, this presentation is all about one-to-one tuition. Now, I know that, group tuition, alternative provisions, that is not my area of interest or expertise. So this is all about one-to-one, and I've never deviated from that model from 13 years ago when I first started out, because I truly believe that is what should happen. Now, just going back to reading recovery, the children who are selected for the reading recovery intervention are just precisely only between the age of 5.9 and 6.3. And the rationale behind that is because they've had enough quality first teaching that they should be able to read. And this is the thing that I found most interesting, and it made so much sense, their self-esteem is usually still intact. Because after the age of 6.3, and there's lots of research, they've obviously did lots of research to back this up, self-esteem, inner voice gets damaged. And the comparison between the child and their peers kicks in. And that's why if you have been a tutor for many years, you will know that you will get a lot of inquiries around year 2, year 3, when, or I mean, it can be later, but when parents are getting sort of feedback from their child that they feel stupid, silly, all those things. And, you know, that's when you might get them not wanting to be at school. So I thought that was so interesting. So, of course, we have, you know, an alternative provision. You're going to be working with a lot of young people who are much older than that, but it's easier if we get them younger. That's usually not the case in alternative provision, which is why it is so complex. Because you're, well, I'll go on to that. I know I won't deviate. So why does AP exist? Why are we hearing that alternative provision is on the increase and there's higher demand? Well, that's because, like I said, it's not the child's fault. The system is not fit for purpose, and that's not an opinion, that's a fact. So it's because we've got unmet SEND needs, mental health challenges, there's more exclusion or exclusion risk. So you might have heard the phrase school refusals. That is not a very nice term because it implies that it's the child's fault. It puts the blame on the child that they are refusing, being disobedient and not doing something that they're supposed to do. So EBSA is the term that we use. So it's emotionally based school avoidance. They can't go to school. They can't be in that building. It's too triggering. It's not fit for purpose for them. So if you haven't heard that term before, please spread that term around. And I find myself doing it to all sorts of people, plumbers who come to the house. I did it yesterday. My cleaner's son, she said, "Oh, I'm really embarrassed to tell you, he's refusing to go to school." And then we stopped and we had a chat for about 15 minutes, and I used that as my opportunity to kind of, you know, gently guide her towards this term of EBSA rather than him refusing. And also it takes the blame off the parent as well, because there's a lot of guilt around that. So you can see already when you're working with children in alternative provision, you're not just teaching a subject. There is a lot to put this child in context. So it exists because children have disrupted educational journeys, and that could be for medical reasons as well, all sorts of reasons why their educational journey has been disrupted. So alternative provision is not lesser, it's just different and alternative. So the emerging direction of AP, so what the government are telling us, what they've told us in their guidelines, which we're waiting with bated breath for the white paper to be released. We know that if we are providing alternative provision, it needs to be delivered by high quality, qualified staff. Every child needs a personalised pathway. There needs to be robust, strong safeguarding things in place. They need flexible timetables. You need to have clear assessment and review so you can show impact, and you need to show how you can change the trajectory of the young people you're working with. So Sam has a lovely poll for us here. So just a reflection, we'll just do the first one. What is your experience of alternative provision? So Sam's hopefully going to give me some feedback when you've
It should pop up at the top of your screen. There should be a purple, something purple at the top of your screen for a poll.
So it's only just to give us some numbers, so nobody's going to look at who's clicked what. It's just so I know where we're going today, where we're starting, our starting point. And there's no right or wrong answer. It's anything goes. Hopefully I've given you enough information if you didn't know about alternative provision to guide you into what alternative provision is.
Okay, so we've got the same amount of votes for both little and some.
Sorry, what did you say, Sam?
The same amount of votes for both little experience and some experience are the most popular.
And none for?
A couple of votes for none and 1 vote for lots.
And what was our other criteria? I forgot. Lots. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, thank you. So, as I thought, a mixture. So just for you to reflect, why have you chosen to attend today? When you were looking through the courses, or you're on LinkedIn, you saw it pop up, or you saw it on the WhatsApp group, why did you choose to give an hour of your time today to come on to this? And again, have a little think about what you hope to take away from this. And I had no idea how many people were going to come on, so I thought there might be 10 and we'd all be having a nice little chat, but that's not the case. So hopefully what you want to take away from this will come out of it. It was really quite hard for me to think about the content, because when I agreed to it, I thought, oh, how am I going to fill an hour? And then when I started, it's been a brilliant exercise for me, reflecting on my journey, because we are, as my business is now being approved as an alternative provision provider for local authorities. I was thinking, is that my starting point? But no, it's not. It goes way, way, way back, probably to me being a child at school who needed some kind of alternative provision. So we'll move on. So before we start talking about strategy, let's talk about unique starting points. Absolutely essential. And we've kind of done that today by looking at, I'm trying to model the kind of way we need to work with our young people, finding out their starting points, where they're at that moment in time. So some learners, they arrive in alternative provision ready to learn. You will get those that are just ready, and not too many barriers, and maybe can be delivered a mainstream kind of curriculum. But then you get others who arrive ready to protect themselves, and they may have experienced their first childhood experience, which we call ACEs. You may get children, neurodivergent learners, and their needs need to be identified first and then met. So every child has a unique starting point, and really, for me, that is the fundamentals of teaching in alternative provision, is finding that out, not just rushing in. And I've had parents on the phone to me who've had tutors where the parents, the thing that they are the most upset, cross about, is that a tutor has turned up to their house to teach their child with a carrier bag of worksheets, and not actually got to know the child, got to know their learning style and all that kind of thing. So yeah, anyway, I won't give you and carry on. So just a little bit on ACEs, just a little bit of a heads up. My eldest daughter is a clinical psychologist, so this is a little bit from one of her presentations that she does for my tutors. So if a child has experienced ACEs, their brain changes, and their neural pathways are affected. Their reactivity is affected. They may be defensive. They anticipate adult criticism because that's what they're used to, or they're defiant. And they can assert control with authoritative figures. And teachers are authoritative figures. With me, in my tuition world, with all my tutors, we're all known by our first names. We are not Mr. or Mrs. We are our first names. And that is one of the reasons why. I'm not saying that's what you have to do. I'm just saying that's why I made that choice. So with children who've experienced ACEs, it can be person dependent on their behaviours that they exhibit. But also if they feel safe and supported with an adult, their behaviour will reflect that. So they don't always exhibit the same behaviours with the same people. And they may have an inability to regulate their emotions. So part of your role as an alternative provision provider will be to enable them to regulate their emotions before you can even think about teaching them anything. And some of those behaviours might be physical. They might be like throwing a chair or tipping the table upside down or snapping a pencil. All of those are behaviours that are communicating something to you. So that's, you know, you might not all children in alternative provision have experienced ACEs, but I just thought it was a really important thing to make you aware of. So what do we need to do? We need to teach differently. So it needs to be alternative, it needs to be one-to-one, in my opinion. And we need to, and that allows to give each child time, attention, and choice. So choice for them, choice for us in how we teach and what we teach. We don't want to, and I know this is like a bit of an overused statement, but we can't just do the same thing, more of the same thing, and expect a different outcome. So in my world, teaching children to read, although we do the whole of literacy, if we just gave these children a phonics scheme, they would push back because a lot of them have had that for 8 years. It hasn't worked. They can't read. So we've got to do things differently. Saying, you know, if you're teaching maths, if a child doesn't know their number bonds or their times tables, and you'll give, you know, they may have had years and years of worksheets with times tables and number bonds. Let's not give them more of that. Let's make it, you know, meaningful. Let's, you know, do some cooking and look at a chocolate bar and look at can we do our times tables using a chocolate bar or Smarties, or can we do number bonds with a game? You know, putting straws down, throwing a dice, picking up, you know, picking up 2 lots of numbers and seeing if you can make 10 and you score a point. Just anything that makes it interesting, fun, practical, concrete. And I find particularly with maths, it's when a child has been expected to move from the concrete into the abstract and all the practical resources have been taken away too early, and they're not ready to use their times tables in the abstract. They need concrete apparatus, concrete experiences in order to grasp something. So you need to be really creative when you're and use the best resources when you're working in alternative provision. Assessment, absolutely, completely essential. Going back to the tutor turning up with a, you know, a carry bag of worksheets or workbooks, you need to do like a really in-depth assessment when you first meet a child, and that can involve, you know, finding out what is on the child's EHCP. Do note when that was done, because quite often, you know, they are a little bit outdated, or that child hasn't been assessed by professionals because they've refused, so don't, you know, it's a legal document, you have to go by it, but just be aware there might be more about that child that you can find out. So you need to know their starting points, because if you don't know where they started, you can't monitor what the impact is that you've had. And your continuous assessment needs to be really detailed. You need to be monitoring tiny, tiny little steps that make a big leap for that child. So, you know, if, for example, if we're teaching a child to read and the first time we meet them, they refuse to read and they close the book and throw it on the floor, that's their starting point. if you're working with a child and you ask them to write independently for the first time and they snap the pencil in half, that's their starting point. So even just holding their pencil and writing their name would be progress. So it's not looking at progress in the traditional sense, it's looking at progress with those tiny little steps that mean so much for that individual. Allow processing time. Every person that used to come and watch me teach my reading recovery sessions would say, gosh, I almost found it a bit awkward, the amount of time you left for the child to think. And then they said, but then when the child got it, wow, how impactful. So especially, I'm not going to go into, there's not time today, but I'm not going to go into all sorts of challenges that our young people might have, but particularly if they have working memory challenges or auditory processing challenges, verbal processing challenges, it just might take them more time. And the worst thing you can do for a child when they know they've got it, but they can't take it off that little hook in their head and communicate it, the worst thing is for somebody to jump in and tell them. So allow time, that's a really big thing. Allow children time to think. And communication, so you need to be able to communicate with the child, you need to be able to communicate the progress to the people who are paying for the child, put it bluntly, because they want to know that they're getting value for money. So the way you do this is by being curious. So when you're teaching, when you're changing trajectories for those children, you're thinking in your head every minute, every second that you're with that child, what is this learner showing me right now? What are they communicating to me? What do they need to know? What do they need from me now at this moment in time or next session? So curiosity before curriculum. So before you start planning out what to teach, you've got to ask, how does this learner learn best? And what are their strengths? And how am I going to facilitate that? So I actually have never liked the word teacher because it feels like a top-down thing. I prefer facilitator. So that's how, we are facilitators of learning. I think that's the best way to put it. So I think, if I remember rightly, I can't see my next slide yet, but I think it's going to be a slide that has stuck with me. So like I said, it's been a great reflection for me about all the things that have really stuck out in education. Oh, this is my cup of tea arriving. Thank you. Yeah, so this is one thing that I have always thought about, and I quoted it actually the other day when I was talking to somebody at a networking meeting, and it's this: the 9 intelligences. So, rather than, if you think about our national curriculum and what it is and how we measure children's intelligence, I think it's really interesting to look at this. And this is from Howard Gardner, a psychologist, 1983. And I think we need to look at learners' strengths and how they're shown in different ways. I think just have a look at that for yourself. Think about where you fit just for a minute while I have a bit of my cup of tea. So I think you can look this up. It's often called the 9 intelligences. So I think just have that in mind. And I remember when I first became a teacher, I remember saying to my mum, I feel like my job as a teacher is to find something about every child in my class that's unique, that's special, that they're good at, that they're interested in. And I used to sort of challenge myself in the first half term to do that with every child and to find something about them that makes them tick, that makes them feel like, oh, I'm really good at that. But as a class teacher, you couldn't always use that as an inroad, but I tried my hardest. So strengths before strategy, being curious about their strengths changes the plan you're teaching. Relationships. I'm sure you all know relationships are everything. They are everything. They are the intervention. So these little visual prompts here are for me to tell you about, really quickly, about 3 pupils who I have taught in the past who kind of stand out for me. So let's call him Gymnastic Boy. So when Gymnastic Boy came to me in year 2, he wasn't a gymnast. He was starting to not want to be in school. He was not wanting to go to any after school clubs, even including things like swimming or clubs or anything like that. He was shutting down from the world. And so when he came to me, I did everything in my power to work out what it was that made him tick. So what I found out quite quickly, that he had some, he was really difficult, like he had to move when he was learning. He had amazing rhythm, and he was really creative. But this took a little while to find out. But the end result was, well, and things that we did were things like tapping out with, I got some drumsticks, so we tapped out syllables or chunks of words to decode. Severely dyslexic, undiagnosed at the time. And what else did we do with him? When he would walk up to the room, the teaching room, he would walk like 3 steps at a time because he was so bendy and stretchy. With all these things that just, we'd act out stories. So when we were doing direct speech, you know, he would take the direct speech and he'd act it out. So just really celebrating him. Fast forward, he's now at secondary school. He joined the gymnastics squad. He went through all the levels, skipped so many children that had been doing it since they were, 3, got into the top squad. He got a music scholarship to his secondary school, and he was lead part in school plays. So, I wasn't just teaching him to read and write. There was so much more. Lego, let's call him Lego Boy. So this is a really recent one. This is a child in an SEMH school with PDA, autistic, literally anything that was perceived as any kind of demand, he pushed back against. So when he first came into the room, I noticed he was being a bit shifty, and he obviously brought something in with him. And then I noticed he had something in his mouth, and that was a Lego brick. So sensory sort of seeking, stimming behaviour was to chew Lego bricks. So if I'd have told him to take his Lego brick out of his mouth, there would have been a huge pushback. So what I said is, let's have a look at your Lego models that you've sneaked in, and sort of asked him how he made them, and talked about how impressive they were, genuinely impressive. Gave them a little stand so they could watch the session. Told him that my job was to keep him safe, and in order to keep him safe, the Lego block would be best on the desk. And just kind of gently guided him. I didn't do it as direct, but gently guided him to that. So this chewing of Lego bricks is something he did a lot. So bear in mind, I'm there to teach him to read, and all this is going on before I can even think about teaching him to read. What I did for him was, I found you can buy them on Amazon, these chewy Lego, they're a Lego brick that you can hang around your neck with a clip at the back, and you can just chew a Lego brick. So basically, I invited myself into his world by doing that, but also showed him that I cared, that I'd listened, that I paid attention, that and I said to him, I can see that you enjoy that you like the sound on your teeth, and that it might feel nice for you. However, I need to keep you safe. And then Fishing Boy, a boy who I first met in an SEMH provision, then he got excluded from that SEMH provision for hitting the head teacher around the face. So he had a lot of physical behaviours that were being played out. But the local authority agreed to fund him, for him to come to me and for me to teach him. And he was and still is the most incredible young person who just needed to be taught in an alternative way. And he's now about 19 and absolutely thriving. He loved fishing, he loved catching fish, he loved everything about fishing. He loved cooking fish, eating fish. So we created a fishing log where he recorded like what the moon was doing, when he was fishing, what size the fish was, what the weather was like, everything, this fishing log that I found that we did. And we read every book you can imagine about fishing. So again, I invited myself into his world. So children need to be safe enough to try, safe enough to fail, and safe enough to be seen, heard, and valued. So if anyone, I'm sure none of you are thinking this, if anyone thinks alternative provision is just a quick, easy in, it's really not. There's a lot, and I'm glad there's a lot involved, because it is so nuanced. It is, for me, I feel like the most rewarding thing to do in tuition, because you can really put a lot of yourself into it, and you'll use your creativity to unlock that child. Sam, how are we doing for time?
It is 11:45.
Right, okay, thank you. Right, so environment is really important. This is one of my tutors, and this is her environment. You're not necessarily all going to have an environment like that, but really when I'm talking, I know we can teach online as well, but I'm talking mainly about teaching in person here. So environment, what's really important is the lighting. So I will often say, would you like the light on or off? So again, that gives them control and choice. I find some children, particularly children who may or may not be dyslexic, or who have that kind of Erlen's syndrome, where like they can see flashes of light on the page when they're reading and words jump around. They don't like overhead spotlights shining right down on the page where they're reading or writing. So just giving that choice. And I've got like a tiny little lamp that they can clip to their writing slope, which is like a nice sort of dull tone rather than bright. And some children choose that. Seating, so do they want to be on this? In this tutor's room, she has a stand-up, sit-down desk, so the children can either stand up or sit down while they're learning. She's also got a carpet area, all that kind of thing. So some children just cannot sit on a chair for 45 minutes or an hour, or however long you're teaching them for, so they might need to move around. We also have something called a kinney bar underneath the desk, where the children can swing their legs like crazy underneath the desk, but when they're next to you or opposite you, you can't see them moving at all. And that's really soothing for children who need to move a lot. Routine is really important. So a lot of children, and not all, I am generalizing a bit, a lot of children who are in alternative provision, they actually crave routine. They might not know that, but a familiar structure is comforting. There's not going to be any surprises. It's the same room, it's at the same time, it's with the same person, with the same resources around them. And that is comforting for children who may have experienced uncertainty in other areas of their life. We use an audio visual timetable actually. So for the young people we work with, so they know what to expect, what's coming up next. I'll often say, would you prefer the door open or closed? Do you want the window open or closed? So again, it's the child communicating with you what it is that they want. Now, I've just realised I haven't actually done anything on this, but it seems like a good time. No, I think I might be able to fit it in somewhere else. Something else about the pupil and making choice, but I'll try and remember to come back to that. So I'm not going to apologise for how many words are on this page, because for me, I keep saying this is really important, this is really important, this is really important, but this is really important. The language you use. So if you remember anything, just remember your choice of words becomes the learner's inner voice. So kind of just let that sink in. The words you speak to them, they become their inner voice. So we need to speak and react with empathy, to ease worries, to guide, encourage. Use precise praise. This is really, really important. So when a child does something or says something that has positively impacted on their learning, we need to encourage those behaviours. And we need to do that by not saying, oh, that was very good, that was very nice, that was very lovely. I used to ban TAs writing very nice, very good, good reading, lovely reading, great reading, because it tells you nothing. What we want is to know, like, did they notice, like, you noticed there that it didn't make sense, so you stopped and you used this strategy and that worked for you. You actually got the word. I didn't have to tell you the word. So really important that you do that. And just on that as well, with that self-correction thing, you can tell a child who hasn't got any problem solving skills for themselves, because when they get stuck, the first thing they do is that they look at you. That tells me everything. Okay, when that child gets stuck, they've been used to somebody doing it for them, or they've been used to somebody writing something on a whiteboard for them to copy, which is basically handwriting practice, not actually them having ownership of their work. So you want to tell them what you want them to do, their desired behaviours, rather than focusing on negative behaviours. And I would, in my reflection creating this, I remember I was always the teacher who would say, oh, please walk, rather than don't run. And I think it's just noticing your language and thinking about shaping their inner voice. We want to promote risk-taking, we want them to be resilient, so all those soft skills that can be transferred. Like the best thing, feedback I can get from parents or school leaders would be things like, oh, they put themselves forward for the school play. They would have never done that before they had tuition with you. So, and I can't think of other examples, but there's other examples that I've had that are nothing to do with teaching literacy, but it means that that child is prepared to put themselves forward and take risks, and they've built up resilience. Avoid, this is just something I thought I'd throw in, avoid saying things like, oh, you remember, come on, we did this last session. It's that makes the child feel like they should remember. But remembering is, well, let's just say, I've never met a child who's deliberately withheld information or knowledge that they know. It's just that at that moment in time, in that context, or because they've had too much cognitive load, because of the mood they're in, because they've just had an argument with somebody before they come to your session, they can't recall it. They cannot recall that information. Even if you've done it 20 times before, they can't remember it at that moment in time. And something I always used to say as a class teacher was, you know, you do the intro to this session and I'd say, oh, when you get stuck, when you don't understand, let me know, rather than if. When gives permission and makes it okay. It's okay to say you don't get something or you need some help. And when we're giving that help, let's prompt and model and scaffold their learning rather than just tell them. So again, when I was thinking about my standouts, my favourite ever quote is a Vygotsky one: what a child can do in cooperation today, he can do alone tomorrow. So I always say with teaching of reading, we're never actually teaching the child to read the book that's in front of them. That's not what we're doing. We're nurturing skills and knowledge that they take with them to the next book that they read. So be mindful of that. So just to summarise, again, one of my favourite sayings, the zone of proximal development. We're looking at what they can do right now independently at that moment in time. That is their current level. And your job as a tutor is to design tasks that are just beyond that level. And that can be, you know, when you're working with a child who has experienced trauma, for example, you want to go even a little bit below that. You're just within their sort of 90–95% confidence level, which we call that like independent level. And then you're, you know, gently nudging them out of that with your guidance, with your modelling, helping them to make sense of the task in a safe way. And then you gradually reduce that support, which is the scaffolding, so they become confident and competent. And then in that process, the responsibility is shifted to the learner, and they can take on more of the thinking and problem solving. I put reading strategies there, but yeah. And you want to repeat that cycle, because you're aiming them to push them into independent grasp, as well as not being afraid of new learning. So confusions, this is another standout for me, and I still see it time and time again. When a child is, I just thought I'd throw this one in. When a child is confused with two things, and it can be anything. It can be their left and the right. It can be, I'm sure there's things in science where children there's two things that they get confused about. My tip is never put them side by side. I mean, typical in reading, I put this as an example. If you've got, you know, a child who's confused with B and D, don't put them next to each other. Get them secure with one. And you'll see everywhere examples of like, this is left, this is right, this is a B, this is a D. Actually, just get them really, really, really secure with one, and then the other one is the other one. But for a child who's dyslexic, for example, they could all look the same because of their visual perception, their visual processing. So yeah, any confusions, any topic, get them secure with one. Having a really good structure to your session. This is we use a visual timetable. We've also got an audio visual one. Your welcome, when you first welcome them into your session, needs to be very low demand. And then you're going to be reassuring them, you're going to be reviewing things with them, you're going to be talking about what they've achieved so far, and kind of really, you know, building them up to feel that they are safe to learn. And then you're going to be practicing things that they've done before and boosting them. Then you're ready to introduce some new learning. And then at the end, you can reflect and share and celebrate their success. So I think we're getting near the end. You're teaching the whole child. I think that's the message that you hopefully have got from this. You may be asked to teach literacy. You're never just teaching literacy. Same if you're asked to teach maths or science. You're never just doing that when you're in alternative provision. So you're always celebrating and teaching the whole child. Pupil voice, absolutely the key to unlocking them. When we really tune into them, when we really listen to them, they tell us what they need. They're really good at telling us what they need. and we can find out what they need by what they say, what they avoid, what they enjoy, and what they repeat. So many of the resources that I've created in my business, if not, I mean, I created some to start out, which I knew we needed, and then I'd say 50% of the other resources we've created are due to a child showing me that they needed to be learning something in a slightly different way. And I've even actually had pupils involved in creating the resources. I call them my inventors. And yeah, so pupil voice, tune into it. I should have put on here actually, one quote was, it was something like, I used to hate reading, now I love it because of all your crazy weird methods. And actually that's what you would, yeah, the children, we need to please the parents, we need to please the local authority, we need to please the school, but actually the pupils will, and I've found some of the most honest, brilliant children are in alternative provision because, you know, they have spoken out about something not working for them. And actually, if you reflect on your own teaching, I have mine, I kind of was a bit of an alternative teacher. Like, I pushed back against the system. I didn't want to work in that system anymore. It didn't work for me. It was emotionally triggering for me. I didn't want to be in that school building anymore, teaching that curriculum anymore. So it kind of, yeah, it kind of mirrors that a bit. So case studies, Sam, what time is it? Sorry, I should have had a clock on the table.
It's 11 o'clock.
Okay, right. I was going to show you a case study, but no, I'm just going to say case studies are really, really powerful. When you're creating case studies, make sure you link them to the child's EHCP, show your intent, what you're aiming to do, how you're going to, you know, what the intent, what you want to do, how you're going to do it, and the impact that you're going to have, and that needs to show value for money. So creating case studies, I have found the most powerful, and especially as we're, you know, applying for local authority contracts, they have been a really powerful tool. So if one method isn't working, repeating it louder rarely creates change. Adapt your method, not the learner. So going back to our title, to re-engage, we need to be curious, we need to reconnect them with our relationships, and they need to learn to relearn through us adapting to them, not them adapting to us. So yeah, I think that's everything. Thank you very much for listening. And yeah, is there anything you want to say, Sam?
No, just thank you so much for your session. I have been, I've been listening all of the way along. I've definitely picked up stuff. I mean, I don't tutor myself, I just run all of the events for you all. But there was lots and lots that is definitely going to be really useful for everybody. Thank you so much, Deborah, for delivering it. For everybody who is on the call, as I said at the beginning, because you joined live, I will send you the link to get your certificate shortly, and also the recording. I don't know, did anybody have any questions before we, I can see Danny's got her hand up before we leave.
Hi, where are you getting like materials and ideas from? Like, when you have a child that you've tried everything you've ever tried before, like, where are you getting all of your ideas from?
Well, my situation is quite unique because I have created all my own resources. I think what I'll have to do, Sam, is if I can think about some signposts that I could share, that you could then share with the participants. I think that might be the best thing, because there are so many resources out there. One thing I would say, I've always attended the SEN show in the Business Design Centre in Islington, which is in October. And actually, in my early days, I learned so much from that. And I got a lot of resources from, you know, resource ideas from there. I might be jumping the gun a bit here, but I mean, you know, just by me being here today, the Tutors Association, of which I am on the board, a director on the board, are doing so much now in terms of alternative provision. And I should imagine at our next conference, there will be more about alternative provision. But in terms of practical resources, I can compile a list of kind of places that you might want to look at. But a lot of the things are just things that you might have, you know, everyday objects and everyday things that you might have to hand. So there's not really a quick, easy answer to that, I'm afraid. Also, I haven't said, if you want to get in contact with me, I think probably the best thing is via the Tutors Association, because like I said, I am on the board there. So I'm on the, if you're a member, I am on the alternative provision WhatsApp thread. I'm also on LinkedIn, so you can connect with me on there. Yeah, and I will be at the SEN show in October. Anything else? No, is that it? I'm actually amazed that I kind of stuck the time. So thank you, everybody.
Sorry, Deborah, just really quickly, I think Wanda had a question as well. I'm not sure, but your hand has gone down.
Oh, yes, and then Deborah answered it. Deborah, I was going to ask if I could contact you around a specific student I'm working with, because so much of what you've said I'm already doing, but I just wanted to check some things with you.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, it might be useful for you to do, you know, obviously, if it's anonymized, it might be useful for you to do that on the AP WhatsApp chat on the Tutors Association, because it might help other people, and other people on there might have things to add that I haven't thought of.
Okay, so I'm not actually on there, so I will have a look at that. Thank you. Okay,
yeah. If you're not on that, then I strongly recommend that you join, because, you know, I learn things from there. There's a lot of people that are happy to share their knowledge. So,
okay, thank you.
Okay.
And then we got Marianne.
Hiya. Just wanted to ask, I'm just a sole trader, just one person on my own. A lot of what you said this morning resonates. Our journeys are very similar, actually. It was lovely to hear you.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been tutoring for 18 years. So,
oh, wow.
And I'm sitting in my brand new classroom, so in my garden. So,
oh, I wish I could see you. I'm trying. I can't see you, but
okay.
Yeah.
My question was, as a sole trader, would I be in a position to go to my local authority and say, I'm here, this is what I do. I'm actually trying out a new model. I call it, this is my own creation, the trusted partnership model. It's a bit like Team Around the Child, which I think has been overused and badly used.
Yeah.
I want to do a little bit of research actually into this idea of, I have my parents with me, because my home educated children, they have such wisdom, and their parents are often very much part of what we're doing. So I'm just literally starting it this week, and I had a dad in with me yesterday, and I was explaining what I'm doing. And it's about, I'm just wondering, would it be possible to have alternative provision children coming here? Because I know a lot of times they work in hubs. Is that something you've heard of?
Yes, it is possible. Now, every single local authority is completely and utterly different. There is no consistency across the country.
That's helpful.
Really helpful. So with all local authorities have to have a local offer, so to show parents of SEN children, or, you know, children in alternative provision, what is on offer. So you could register yourself as an approved tutor with your local authority, but that would be going onto their website, making a phone call. I strongly recommend phone calls to local authority and getting a person and a name so that you can communicate with them. So you would have to phone them, contact them directly. In the meantime, put together a case study of the child that you've taught, and mention their, like, cite their EHCP. You can be an anonymous case study, make it anonymous, but that would be my first piece of advice, would be to create a case study.
Good idea. Thank you very much indeed. It's been brilliant this morning. Thank you.
Oh, good. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Thank you. Okay, I think we better finish, Sam, because we are running over now, aren't we? Sam, go on.
Sorry, I've not got my microphone on off. Thank you, everybody, for coming, and thank you so much, Deborah, as well.
Okay, thank you. Thanks.
Thank you very much.